Let's talk about something that's at the very core of who we are, the heart. And no, I don't mean the organ that's pumping blood through your veins. We're going deeper. We're talking about the inner control room that really shapes everything. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. It's the key to figuring out why on earth we do the things we do. You ever have one of those moments, where you react to something and you just think, where did that come from? Or maybe there's a habit you just can't seem to kick, no matter how hard you try. Well, we're going to trace those outward things, those actions, all the way back to their source to uncover what's really driving us from deep inside our hearts.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what we even mean by the heart. Then we'll dig into the hidden motives that drive it and the life experiences that have shaped it. After that, we'll look at the ultimate compass for our inner world, see how it all plays out in daily life, and finally, we'll talk about the path to real change and renewal.
Okay, let's start with the absolute foundation. What exactly are we talking about when we use this word, the heart? Think of your heart as the mission control for your entire life. Seriously, it's way more than just your feelings or emotions. It's the place where you think, where your deepest desires are born, and where you make your most fundamental choices. It's basically the operating system that runs the whole show. This verse just says it all, doesn't it? Our life is pretty much an overflow. The words we say, the things we do, it all flows from what's going on inside. You can't hide it forever. Whatever is filling up your heart will eventually come spilling out into the real world. So if the heart is mission control, what are the big, powerful forces running the program? Well, you can think of them like a root system. They're deep, they're often hidden, but they determine what kind of fruit our lives are going to produce. This really breaks down a core struggle for so many of us. On one side, you have the fear of man. That's when you're driven by what other people think, their approval, their rejection, and that's a recipe for anxiety and people-pleasing. But on the other hand, a reverence for God, that leads to real stability and integrity because you're anchored to something that doesn't change. And here's another one of those fundamental crossroads. Are you operating from a place of self-reliance? That feeling that it's all on me, I have to carry everything? That's a direct path to anxiety and burnout. The alternative, a childlike trust, a posture of dependence. And that's where you find real rest, real faith, even when life feels completely out of control. And of course, there's more. That deep need for control, right? Or the constant search for comfort and relief above all else. Maybe it's self-righteousness, that feeling that we can earn our way through good performance. And underneath all of it so often is just plain unbelief, a deep-seated doubt that God's ways are actually good and trustworthy. These are the powerful currents that guide our lives. Now, this inner root system doesn't just grow in a vacuum. It grows in the soil of our life, all our experiences, our background, our context. This is all about the world that has shaped us into who we are today. You can kind of see how these layers build on each other. It starts with our shared human nature. Then you add in our unique bodies, our DNA, the limits we're born with. Layer on top of that our childhood, where we learned our first lessons about trust and safety and love. And then you add the culture we're swimming in, what it tells us is normal, what it rewards, and what it shames. All these things create the default stories we live by. Okay, and this is a really, really important point. Understanding our background is crucial, but it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Our experiences absolutely shape us, they form us, they make certain struggles more intense, but they don't erase our responsibility for the choices that ultimately come from our heart. It's a context, not an excuse. So that brings us to what might just be the single most important factor of all, the one thing that orients everything else. It's your view of God. That's the ultimate compass for your heart. This verse really forces the issue, doesn't it? It makes you ask a really tough question. What do you truly fear? Because whatever you fear most reveals who or what has ultimate authority in your life. Is it what people can do to you, or is it God? The answer to that changes literally everything. You can draw a straight line from how you see God to your basic posture in life. If you see God as someone who's supposed to give you a perfect life, well, you're going to get angry when things go wrong. If you think the outcomes in this life are the most important thing, you're going to live in fear. But if you truly trust in His goodness and His sovereignty, that's where you find rest and faith. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time exploring the invisible, inner world of the heart. Now let's get practical. Let's connect it to the visible. Where does all this stuff actually show up in the real world? Think of your everyday life as a kind of stress test for your heart. Take work, for example.
The pressure of a deadline or a difficult colleague will reveal what you're really trusting in for your identity and approval. In marriage, our selfishness or our capacity for love and sacrifice comes right to the surface. And when we suffer, man, that's when what we really worship gets exposed. Even how we use social media reveals our deep desires for things like comfort, escape, or validation.
So after diagnosing all of this, the million-dollar question is there any hope for change? Can our hearts actually be renewed? And that is exactly what this last section is about. It's about cultivating a healthy heart. Now, the path to a healthier heart isn't about just trying harder or pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's definitely not about earning God's favor. Instead, it's about intentional practices that cultivate faith. It means actively renewing our minds with what is true. It means practicing dependence through prayer, moving away from trying to save ourselves. It means walking in honesty, confession, and repentance. And it means training our desires to line up with what is actually good and true. So we end where we began, with that core metaphor. If your life is the fruit, what does it say about the root? When you step back and look at the patterns in your life, your words, your automatic reactions, your biggest struggles, what do they tell you about what's really going on, deep down in your heart?